Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? Are we ready to move forward with this book? Oh, my goodness. Now, one of my sons just arrived. I don't know if you guys can hear the dog. He's having a meltdown. I went to Pilates for the very first time. I feel fine, Lizzie. But I went to Pilates for the first time. So my only complaint right now is that my muscles and my legs are screaming at me. Oh my goodness, the dog is having a meltdown. All right, so when we stopped last time at the end of chapter 8, let me just remind you that this is when everybody was divided about Megxit. That on the one side, they felt that Harry and Meghan had shown a lot of ingratitude to the royal family. And on the other side, people believed that Harry and Meghan were the victims of racism and that was going to justify the next steps that they were about to take. All right. So here we go. Chapter 9. The top of it is called Freedom. All right. Now, we all know that Heathrow has a lounge that's just for the rich and famous there. It's £3,000 per person. If you're flying into Heathrow, you can buy some privacy and some comfort, and then you're professionally driven to the aircraft steps. So apparently Harry was there as he was waiting to fly back to Vancouver after the Sandringham Summit. Now, since the Sandringham Summit, Meghan apparently got on the phone and was confirming their commercial agreements that had been set up. Her business manager in Los Angeles said, oh, yeah, a contract with Netflix is in the bag. Filming is going to start as soon as you arrive in California. Oprah's waiting for you. And of course, Meghan encouraged Harry that he could monetize his anger, and that would be very cathartic for him. You know, it'd be a good cure for him. And it would change their lives for the better because after all, he's always right. Betrayal was a good story. So Meghan arranged for a woman named Jennifer Rudolph Walsh at the William Morris Endeavor Agency, WME, we've heard of them, to be Harry's literary agent. And of course, this woman, whoever she is, promotes herself as America's best literary agent. She's like the most successful agent, and she has links to everybody and, you know, all the celebrities. And she, you know, acknowledged that Harry was going to deliver a brutal expose of his life on the royal family. Harry never considered the hypocrisy of what he was doing. Harry always said when it came to Thomas Markle, Meghan's dad, quote, it's amazing what people will do when offered a huge amount of money. Because remember, Thomas Markle accepted $1,500 for those staged paparazzi photos before Meghan's wedding. And of course, Doria jumped in and said that she was stunned Tom would be a part of that circus, that he would capitalize. And Harry also damned Thomas Markle for selling interviews about Meghan, even though he was doing the exact same thing. He was about to do the exact same thing for a lot more money than what Thomas Markle made. And Harry knew what he was doing. And it was exactly what Diana had done with her many interviews. His aim, however, was to damage the royal family as much as possible. So this Walsh woman pitched a 3-book deal to Penguin Random House. We already heard about that. One book was The Bench. One book is The Spare. And then Meghan's supposed to be doing some wellness cookbook crap, whatever it is. Harry needed a ghostwriter. And in the meantime, Meghan's complaining about Thomas Markle giving TV and magazine interviews after she asked him to stop speaking, even though she too was about to give an interview to Vogue, People Magazine, Oprah, and they were about to do the Netflix show. So this has all been in the planning since the wedding. And she was well in the process of getting a director for Archewell, the commercial organization that they set up. We all know about Archewell. They claimed, by the way, that they arrived in America penniless. Not only did Harry inherit over 10 million pounds from his mother, which is like 13 or 14 million dollars, Meghan saved about 2 million, and their agents promised them multi-million-dollar advances. Harry was very indecisive, and he was the one who delayed leaving for Los Angeles because he made a lot of promises at Sandringham, and one of them was that they wouldn't use their titles to make money. That was one of the agreements. All of his promises about working loyally for the crown while living in Canada and not using the royal status were about to go up in smoke. So they returned to London on the March 5th to do a Hollywood-style farewell. Excuse me, y'all. Meghan had some photo opportunities. Harry went to the Royal Marines at the Royal Albert Hall and made a speech. And then he made an appearance with William and Catherine, who apparently at the Royal Family's Commonwealth Day service in Westminster Abbey. And it really didn't look good. And if you remember what happened there, the Queen decided to give Harry a taste of what was coming and took him off of the procession. And so he wasn't supposed to be in the procession, and William was. And there was such a fight that William agreed to not do the procession just to appease Harry and get him to shut the hell up. And that's what happened. And we know that because there was a, what do they call those? You know, they hand them out when you get there. There was a program. Okay. So her parting words to the Daily Mail, this is what Meghan said her parting words to the Daily Mail were: "I gave up my entire life for this family. I was willing to do whatever it takes, but here we are. It's very sad." And of course, there were violins playing. And of course, Tom Bradby went on and actually, now this was a man who was good friends with William. He did William and Catherine's interview when they got engaged. Tom Bradby, by the way, he's been cut off since then. He called the royal family racist, and that there were no attempts made by anyone to heal the wounds. A lot of other people, though, saw through Meghan, saw that she was dishonest. She really hadn't sacrificed anything, and she gained status. She was unemployed, which is true. She'd been written off suits. She had a rental home, a rental car. She had nothing, and yet she was now a global celebrity. So she exploited the royal family for 3 years, and even the New York Times endorsed her, contrived crap that she was putting out. So they left for an uncertain life as semi-royals in a distant frontier outpost, and they went back to Vancouver Island. And by the way, remember, they were told to wear Meghan was told to wear certain colors, and instead she wore blue to this outfit and green to this outfit, and she completely just decided she wasn't going to follow any of the rules. So as soon as they get back to Vancouver, just like Harry was warned by his staff, the 24-hour taxpayer-funded police protection was being withdrawn. Now, remember, we found out later on that Harry and Meghan were using their security to go get them coffee, to go get them sandwiches. They were using them like servants because they didn't have any. So Harry's calling his family vipers, and I can't protect my son. And Harry was told by the palace that there was a deadline to cease being a working royal, and that was March 31st. And to comply, Sussex Royal had to be immediately closed. They agreed to close it. They never closed it. If you go look, it's still up. It's still running. They never closed the thing down. Now in March, this Jennifer Rudolph Walsh from WME told Harry Penguin Random House was going to make her the best bid for his autobiography. 3 best-selling books were delivered. If 3 best-selling books were delivered, they could get in excess of $20 million. The first book would be guaranteed $3 million, and the contract wasn't going to be signed, but he needed to start getting to work. So they should get to California as soon as possible, and always being worried about not having enough money, and always aware then that her celebrity was now more fruitful than the freebies that she was getting, the TIG, Meghan needed a place to stay and a free private jet to take all of their possessions from Vancouver to California. So Keely Thomas Morgan, the two of them decided they should appeal for help as the target of the royal family's racism. And the plea was answered by Tyler Perry, of all people. So they put all their possessions on Tyler Perry's private jet. They flew to Los Angeles. And there you go. And we know that they started because remember, Harry said, he's doing the video. Good morning. It's 6 a.m. on the 14th of March, and we're on the Freedom Flight. We're leaving Canada and we're headed to Los Angeles. And he went on about they're escaping a level of hate that's been stirred up in the last 3 years, particularly against my wife and my son. By the way, that statement was suggested by their Los Angeles agent. Now, Netflix would pay more, they were told, if they delivered hours of private videos shot in their most intimate moments. So Meghan understood this. And since the minute she met Harry, she was collecting stuff. What did I tell you guys? They collected stuff they didn't need to, why are they doing this? They started a year or two before, and they did that because she knew what they were going to be doing. So for Harry, it was different. He said that on and offline, quote, this came from Spare, the continued harassment, intimidation, and abuse that my wife and I have suffered at the hands of the tabloids. He didn't want to be the object of the media. He didn't want to be the object of anything. And when he got off the plane in California, he was like, oh, great. Now I'm beyond anybody's control. Nobody can control me. He dumped his family. He walked away from the oaths that he made, all of his constitutional obligations, and the need for self-restraint was gone. So they're settling into Tyler Perry's house. We all remember that huge mansion with 8 bedrooms. It was on 22 acres. And Meghan was like, I'm so glad to be home. And her supporters, Democrats, liberals, anti-monarchists, all these people were like, we're so happy for you, Meghan. And what they said was, we don't wish to be trailed by the media, obsessed over, watched. Harry didn't want to be reminded of his mother's tragic death every time they were photographed. And Meghan didn't want to be tabloid fodder for what she wore, how she did her hair. Yes, she did. She most certainly did. She didn't enjoy the spotlight. Yes, she did. Oh my God. They wanted to live as regular people and raise their children in private. And yeah. So unconcerned about the promises Harry made in Sandringham not to financially exploit his family, Meghan ordered Archewell to be rebranded Sussex.com with the coat of arms that the Queen gave her. And the website headed the Office of Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Harry says that that's their family name. He also knows that that's untrue. Archie's birth certificate has Mountbatten Windsor. We all know that also. And Archewell is going to need $100 million to rank as an effective Hollywood foundation. Okay. Now in London, we're back to London. We got Princess Anne. And she says that Meghan was gripped by red carpet fever. She was always searching for the spotlight. That status was so vital to her. And Harry would expect a home fit for a king in California. So an agent offered them the house in Montecito that we know. It's 90 miles north of Los Angeles. It's the American Riviera because of the mountain ranges and blah, blah, blah. About 10,000 people seeking discretion live there. We know that lots of famous people live there and paparazzi doesn't bother them. They can walk around freely. It's not a problem. You have producers, industrialists, celebrities, whatever. 7.4 acres. The house is 18,000 square feet, 9 bedrooms, 14 bathrooms. It has a gym, tennis court, swimming pool, 5-car garage, 2-bedroom guest house. And the Russian owners were fire sailing this house for 14.65 million. Alexa, stop. For 14.65 million or 11 million pounds. Now, the 14.65 million was a reduction from 34 million. So they paid this guy 5 million cash and they got a mortgage for 9.5 million. And that's an arrangement, which, by the way, which underlined what Harry told Oprah, that the family arrived without any money because his father cut him off financially. Obviously not. They had 5 million cash. And so what did I tell you guys before? That I figured between the mortgage, the power, the water, the cable, the maid, the nanny, the lawn people, the security people, the cars, blah, blah, blah. They need about $3 million a year, 3 to 4 million a year to live. So Meghan assumed that her title and the house made her royalty. She would be philanthropic like her neighbors, and she would get invitations to all the big charity functions, and she would hobnob with people. And Archie would go to a nursery that's majoring in emotional literacy, mindfulness, and sustainability. And of course, Harry would join the local polo club along Nacho. Remember Nacho, the Calvin Klein guy? Whew, Nacho. But the first morning after they moved into their house, Meghan had the miscarriage. Now, of course, Harry blamed the miscarriage on the stress from the paparazzi. It's such a crap. And the publication of the letter that Meghan sent to her dad. That's not what causes miscarriages. Sorry. She accused the newspaper. We know that she sued, and she accused the newspaper of misuse of private information and infringement of copyright. And now I'm going to read one thing here. I've told you guys that's not really how it works. A certain percentage of pregnancies end in miscarriage. I myself have had some miscarriages. 20% of pregnancies end in miscarriage. And perhaps more relevance, Harry didn't realize Meghan apparently had preeclampsia, which she apparently had in her first pregnancy, and that can lead to complications. And at the time of the miscarriage, Meghan anticipated victory in her lawsuit against the newspaper in the UK for publishing that letter. So despite everything going on, Harry was still unhappy. He felt lonely. Several of his close friends had not been allowed at the wedding. They were at the wedding, but not at the party after. They'd been excluded. And there was really not a lot of people for him to call back in Britain. So he called Buckingham Palace and said, I want to speak to the Queen. Can you believe the nerve of this guy? He demanded money. He demanded apologies. And the conversation became so bad, Harry even swore and shouted at the Queen. This elderly lady. So irritated was she. She refused to speak to him anymore and said, you know what? Talk to your dad. Call your father directly. And Charles made himself unavailable. Totally understand that. One moment, guys. So he was very lonely in California. They settled into this new home. He was told to get to work on his book. They needed to establish Archewell. They needed staff. They needed a chief executive. And of course, they got James Holt. We know James Holt. We knew also that he had been a communications director for the Liberal Democrats and a special advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister. So any doubts that Harry had about doing his tell-all book, about, spilling the secrets of his family, evaporated when he found out that Charles did a book, his own book. And his source was the Spencer family. Right after Diana gave her BBC interview, the Panorama one in 1995, Charles worked on a manuscript that apparently started after the Andrew Morton's revelation, Diana, her true story, where remember she did the tapes and she smuggled them out and the book came out. Okay. So his mother wrote some nasty stuff about dad. So dad decided to write his own book. Sparing no feelings, Charles apparently criticized his parents and he was very angry towards Diana. And he allowed the Queen's former private secretary, Robert Fellows, to read the manuscript before putting it in a safe for future generations. It was unlikely that subsequent staff was made aware, and Harry's book would counter that unknown bombshell. There you go. Random House senior editor Ben Greenberg had to find the ghostwriter for Harry. And apparently Meghan was involved in the selection of the ghostwriter. So there you go. Harry can't do anything on his own. Yes, Heather from the Hood, he yelled at the Queen. They were talking about all these different writers that they were going to get, and they finally got John Moranger. We already know who he is. We already know about him. He's a former New York Times journalist. And his method and style was evident and, blah, blah, blah. Let's skip all that. Now, because of COVID restrictions, and by the way, the project remained secret until 2021. So he'd been working on that book the whole time he was at Tyler Perry's house. He was working on that book. COVID restrictions prevented Harry and Meghan from meeting the ghostwriter personally. So they met over Zoom. And the ghostwriter goes, well, we hit it off immediately. They were both sensitive, touchy, and preoccupied by their feelings. Okay. So Mowanger's brief was to, quote, unflinchingly chronicle an intimate and honest human experience. Harry used his ghostwriter like a therapist. Oh my God. He spoke about his wish to rebut every single lie published about me. So this part I'm going to read word for word. In his own words, Harry was a man more sinned against than sinning, and his paranoia was matched by Meghan's appetite for attention. Harry, she assured Moranger, would be unflinchingly candid. No amount of self-exposure, she indicated, was off limits, so long as the casualties, and that was their enemies, were less than incidental. Oh my God. So the truth of the matter is Harry wanted to be in the spotlight, but he wanted to be in the spotlight on his own terms. And he talked about loyalty, but here he was betraying like freaking everybody. He was obviously jealous that William was always the center of attention, and he was hoping that this would put the media more on him, partly to encourage the recognition that William was jealous. Now, why would William be jealous? Because Harry had freedom in California. Everybody was out to get Harry. He did have paranoia. And we know that in the book, he invaded their privacy by retelling intimate conversations, knowing that the family could not answer back. We know this. This was not just a guy pouring out his random thoughts, but a man motivated by spite, and he wanted to cause harm. So they're having Zoom discussions, and they discuss Harry's feeling like he was isolated and he was unappreciated, and he's a non-person in his own family, and he was relegated out. He wasn't relegated out, but whatever. And the ghostwriter basically told Harry, this book is going to give you an identity. The editors in New York began to think that Harry didn't understand how the ghostwriter's vision of the book was different from his own. Harry wanted to justify his decisions to leave his family and expose the British media as the people that were responsible. They're criminals responsible for the murder of his mother and why he's so miserable. The ghostwriter's concept was to portray Harry like a bird in a cage, a boy struggling to conquer his inside demons and a dysfunctional family and blah, 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 blah. So everybody thought the differences would be ironed out eventually. Harry, it seemed, was fixated on his private parts. The royal genitals would grab readers' attentions. The word penis is mentioned 8 times, and Todger, Harry's frozen penis, is mentioned 6 times. And they talk about the whole frostbite thing and how he put his mother's Elizabeth Arden cream on, and how when he smelled it, it transported him back through time. That's like freaking creepy. And let me just tell you, after that, for those of you who don't know, Jimmy Fallon did a book called The Prince and the Penis. It was hilarious. He talked about the loss of virginity and the grassy field behind the Vine Treen Inn. He talked about all of that. He was indiscreet about Pat, a matron in Lovegrove. Remember, he made fun of her. She had chronic pain and she was having trouble. And we found out later on that he was tormenting her and teasing her and making fun of her. I mean, my God, this is a child. This is an adult. And he thinks that this was appropriate behavior. He said he sought to make the miserable Pat bust a gut. The cruelty to a defenseless woman in this instant didn't seem to bother Harry at all. And he absolutely hated Camilla. He thought that she's the one who influenced Charles to hate him. He called Camilla the wicked stepmother. He called Camilla dangerous. We read all that in Spare. But remember, a year before, I showed you guys a video where he said he loved her to bits, but he hoped Charles wouldn't marry her, even though she made Pa happy. His thought process was that without Camilla, Diana would still be alive and still be married to Charles. Obviously, that even without Camilla, that marriage would have failed horribly. He said that his passion to punish Camilla and Charles for Diana's death started in 1996. What happened was Charles employed a publicist to help improve Camilla's image, because we all know when they got together, Camilla's image was in the toilet. People were throwing eggs at the cars and stuff. So the idea was to bring Camilla up. They were bringing Harry down. They were sacrificing him to make her look better. And so one bombshell came after another, and the book editors were very delighted by everything. And then, of course, he confessed about taking the drugs. He started with marijuana at Eton, cocaine, ketamine, magic mushrooms, Nepalese hashish, temple balls. Now, of course, remember when this was put in the paper back when he was actually doing it before, he told everybody that the tabloids were lying about him, that it wasn't true. Now he's admitting that it is true. Unbelievable. Oh my God. And then he admitted that at a party in 2016 at Courtney Cox's house, he took some magic mushrooms and hallucinated and saw a trash can talking to him. And that's Harry. The editors did not tell Harry that bragging and encouraging illegal drug use and talking about all of his mental health issues, people could make fun of him for that. They didn't bother to do anyone. Nobody wanted to question anything that he was putting down in this book. But they said it would be a global hit because, you know, sex, drugs, and all these revelations about the royal family. Now we're on to chapter 10, Netflix. But before we go forward, does anybody have any questions about chapter 9? And yes, he yelled at the queen. Unbelievable. I can't believe he yelled at the queen. That really hurts my heart. And that just hurts my heart. He yelled at that poor woman. Unbelievable. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Wait 1 second. All right, let's move on to chapter 10. The title is Netflix. Okay, so everything's falling into place. You got COVID lockdown. And so because of COVID lockdown, people weren't going to the movie theaters. They're all watching Netflix. So their income went boop because people, were confined to home. I wasn't, but everybody else was. So the Netflix's head of content, Brandon Rigg, and his successor, Ted Sarandos, and by the way, he's also Harry and Meghan's neighbor, just in case you guys don't know that, decided that the tell-all documentary was going to be a big hit. And so Sarandos agreed that they would make 5 series over 5 years. And they said the biggest surprise to everybody was that Harry was ready to just partner up with Netflix. And the people who produced The Crown, remember? Yeah. Now, Netflix would not get an exclusive for the first blockbuster series because Meghan had to honor the agreement she made with Oprah that she made back in London for the first appearance. So with 1 year between Oprah interview and the Netflix series, there would be plenty of new material. So, of course, rumors were spreading. We all heard that the Netflix deal might be worth $100 million. But apparently they're not. It really wasn't that much. Somebody said, I can't say this word. I should be able to curse. What's wrong with me? They're star effers. One of the program makers said, who couldn't get a Netflix contract. He couldn't get a Netflix contract, but they gave it to Harry and Meghan. So Meghan, who was still marketing herself as a warrior for social justice, victimhood, racism, all of that stuff, all of her suffering, and now we're having the run up to the 2020 presidential election, and Meghan and Harry wanted to play a part. It was Donald Trump. It was the first time around, or was his second time? No, he was president, and they were trying to get him out and get Joe Biden in. So they highlighted Biden's removal of gender identity from official statements. So the terms mother, father, I don't know, brother, they're unacceptable. I just think that's insane. What do you mean mother, father is, crazy. So of course, Harry and Meghan shared his thought processes, and they were included in the list of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people on the planet. Remember when Harry looked like her hairdresser standing behind her while Meghan posed like, look at your locks. You guys remember that? So Meghan sat down and to build communities of compassion. And she goes, this is the most important election of our time. And Harry was going, as we approach this November, it's vital we reject hate speech, misinformation, and online negativity. But yet, Harry snubbed Ivanka Trump when she visited Buckingham Palace with her father during the state visit in 2019. And that was because Meghan told him not to. She refused to go to the state dinner. So Harry was like, well, I can't go. I mean, and we all know what Trump said, right? I'm not a big fan of hers. I wish Harry luck because he's going to need it. So she wrote an article for Elle magazine, Meghan did, back in 2015. And she talked about being a victim of racism. She gave no evidence of this racism, no personal evidence of disadvantaged suffering during her life. She said that after she returned from Britain, she realized that the Americans' race conflict was devastating, and it was sad to see where our country was. And then it goes into the whole George Floyd thing. Now, she swore that she was there for that. Thomas Markle has already, in the riots, Thomas Markle has said she didn't see it. He took her out of town so she wouldn't see it. So she adopted all of the Black Lives Movement's arguments about white privilege. Harry, of course, echoed anything that she said. And although the critics labeled the Black Lives Movement as one inspired by Marxism, Harry shared her view about white man's guilt. Oh my God. White society produced bias and it has an effect on young people of color. White Britons need to understand people of a different color skin. I'm unbelievable. Because when you go into a shop, you see only white dolls. Do you think that's weird? That's not true. I could walk into Walmart right now. They have Hispanic dolls, black dolls. That's not true at all. I don't know what this man is talking about. And by the way, Black Lives Matter, right after she backed it up, got in trouble because one of the women that was running it bought a mansion in an all-white neighborhood, for those of you who don't know. So they muted, the Sussexes muted their criticism of Black Lives Matter supporters when it was proposed that George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln be canceled because they had slaves. You're talking about something that happened how many years ago? How many hundreds of years ago? Then they demanded that hundreds of classic literature books be banned as racist. Oh, Lord. So the press announced their Netflix deal. The problem is Meghan didn't have the skills to produce a documentary series. The series, she said, was going to be their love story. And the professionals who worked with her understood that she had some limitations. She didn't have the skills. She didn't have the talent to do any of this stuff. This also became apparent in The Bench. It was leaden. It was similar to The Boy and the Bench, which was a book published in 2018. She was often accused of copying others. Remember the TIG? It was based on the success of established influencers. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, Pearl was canceled because a woman stepped up and said, "That's mine. I wrote those books." And she went to sue Netflix. And that's why Pearl got canceled, because she plagiarized Pearl as well. So anyway, Meghan can't admit if she's got any flaws or judgments, and she just believed in herself, and she knows what she likes and doesn't like, and what she would put up with and what she wouldn't. And once she was married, she said the people that fawned over her, she deserved it. Now, Harry watched from the side while Meghan selected the 4 producers for the Netflix docuseries. He didn't question why they were all women. Giona Jefferson was a Black American who described herself as an accomplished interdisciplinary thinker and strategic decision maker. I mean, this is what I don't get. Meghan understood you got to have the right director. So her first choice, or I should say her final choice, was Garrett Bradley, who was the first Black woman to win a director's award at the Sundance Film Festival. Okay, so that's who she hired. And Bradley wanted to prioritize race, class, and social justice. So they knew that they would allude to the racism and all that other stuff. And they were going to focus on Meghan's victimhood in Britain. And by focusing on that, the audience would be able to relate to everything Meghan went through, and that it aligned with Meghan's thing about be kind to yourself. But Meghan, quite frankly, was just naive. It was really important. It just didn't go well. She hated the disciplined filming. She wanted unlimited access to Harry, Meghan, their home, their bedroom, their bathroom. And she said, I listen to the people, the images come, it becomes a script and whatever. And Harry and Meghan realized that without control, it was the opposite of what Meghan wanted. So guess what? There went their director. Now, a lot of people don't realize that Meghan's hairstylist and makeup artist, that would be Daniel Martin, needed 2 hours every day before Meghan could go in public. Nobody could see her looking in the mirror, spontaneously looking without makeup. And the whole our love story couldn't be told that way. So filming started in autumn of 2020, and within weeks, Bradley was out. And everything she taped was tossed. And Meghan began looking for another woman. Procrastination, indecision, delays, the typical patterns of Meghan. All right. Does anybody have any questions about number 10? About chapter 10? I have a frog in my throat. All right. Yeah, we're going to cover the emails on Friday, because tomorrow what we're really covering is the court case, but we're not covering the emails. All right. Chapter 11 is titled My Truth. Am I paraphrasing enough for you guys? Do you understand what's happening in the book? Are we good? Okay. So chapter 11, My Truth. So Harry and Meghan were very preoccupied. They had that campaign going against the tabloids. David Sherborne was reporting back to them that they were having good progress, that his claims against the Mirror and the Sun were going to go to trial. And he's like, and Meghan's going to win her case, blah, blah, blah. So now Harry and Meghan wanted to personally target the journalists that they felt were responsible for intruding into their privacy and exploiting them. So there you go. Ready? They accused Jason Kanoff, the same Jason Kanoff that helped them out so much, and other palace employees of leaving Meghan unprotected, and that Meghan was forced to endure hundreds of thousands of inaccurate articles. And since Harry and Meghan are such honorable people, they were pulled apart for no good reason other than to earn profits. So you have the truth, you have Harry and Meghan's truth, and then you have the irrefutable facts. And for Harry, the irrefutable truth doesn't matter. Whatever he believes is what they go with. So Harry and Meghan's version of events in the palace were corroborated by Omid Scobie with Finding Freedom, which we found out later on Jason Kanoff helped Meghan give the information to Omid Scobie. He talked how Meghan was the victim of sexist and racist palace courtiers, that they called her Harry's showgirl, and Harry was calling them vipers, and the rift was all William's doing. Thomas Markle was a bankrupt, unloving, and deceitful father who failed to arrive at the wedding. And Catherine snubbed Meghan. Now, in the book, Omid Scobie did thank Harry and Meghan and those close to the couple for the help. Remember, that's Jason Kanoff. Now, according to Harry and Meghan's rules of privacy, they're not allowed to be criticized in the media. We know this. But a lot of people saw the hypocrisy that they could assist Scobie to criticize the royal family. So Harry and Meghan were a little embarrassed when Omid Scobie wrote that. Thank you for the people close to them. And it was in the legal case during the Mail on Sunday. Remember, and I told you this the other day, Meghan said she didn't have anything to do with that book. She denied helping, that they did not collaborate with the authors of the book or give authority to anyone to speak to the authors on her behalf. That came out in the trial. Those are quotes from the trial. Meghan herself said the Mail on Sunday's allegations that she had helped Scobie were false, fantastical, and a conspiracy theory. She says, I don't know how much help the authors got from her staff. And she certainly wasn't given the chance to fact check or change anything. Meghan's truth was supported in court because Omid Scobie signed his own legal statement saying that the Duke and Duchess did not collaborate with me. And if anybody says they did, then that's a lie. Scobie had to have known. He knew he was lying. I don't think he cared because Jason Kanoff had briefed him. We've all seen that email. And Scobie also had been introduced to her friends by Sarah Latham and Keely Thomas Morgan at Meghan's urging. Now, Meghan also denied telling any of her friends about the letter to her father that featured in People magazine in 2019. But obviously, she had to have. Otherwise, how would her friends have known what was in that letter? Common sense, people, common sense. Unbelievable. She goes, it wasn't me. I had nothing to do with it. But she did tell several of her friends what was in that letter. Oh, my goodness. So to avoid letting people know about her cooperation with Scobie and the messages to her American girlfriends, Meghan's attorneys tried to get the judge to say that the trial was unnecessary, that they tried to get a summary judgment before the trial started. Guess what? Didn't happen. They had to go to trial. Oh my God. That just makes me angry. Now, the case goes on. The palace offered to give evidence about Meghan's conduct because Jason Kanoff and Sarah Latham knew about Omid Scobie's briefing and the meeting of the friends and all of that. They knew all the background, and Meghan's letter to her father was created with their help. But Mark Warby, the trial judge, said, I don't need it. Being royal does not make one public property. What was going on between Meghan and her dad was private. If it was private, then Meghan's friends shouldn't have gone to the thing. So they remember Meghan won. So in Montecito, they were celebrating. We've won. You can't take somebody's privacy and exploit it. And I share this victory with each one of you because we all deserve justice and truth, and we all deserve better. My treatment by the media is illegal and dehumanizing. That was from her statement that she put out. We all remember that. She said, the public is entitled to reliable, fact-checked, high-quality news. When power is enjoyed without responsibility, the trust we all place in this much-needed industry is degraded. Blah, 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 blah. Now, while this is going on, in July of 2021, Meghan's Beverly Hills attorney completed registering a ton of companies in California and Delaware for Harry and Meghan. The idea behind this was to funnel money through these companies to help with the IRS and to stop anybody really asking what was going on with their finances. It would be hard to trace through all of these ventures. A lot of people do that. In anticipation that the Netflix series was coming out and the book publications and all this other stuff, these are the companies: Pika Publishing, Cobblestone Lane, Bridgement, River Soul Productions, Cloverdale, stuff like that. Now, while Meghan's looking for a new director, we know that she ended up with Liz Garbus. We know that she met Liz while she was pitching Pearl, which got canceled for plagiarism. Now, they talk about that in here, by the way. Lawyers representing Arthur Mel Elliott, who had written the series of 3 best-selling Pearl Power books between 2014 and 2016, wrote to Meghan in 2021, and the series was canceled. And the excuse Netflix gave was that Meghan's pitch failed to tell a visual story. No, they would have been sued for plagiarism. So anyway, Liz Garbus agreed to do the show. And Harry by now was completely following anything that Meghan did. The royal family was racist. They were prejudiced. Anything Meghan said, Harry went with. Now, those who had smeared Meghan's reputation in London about all those pre-wedding arguments and her bullying the staff, that she wanted to talk about during the Oprah show. And we know that they did. Oprah's team spoke to Meghan before the interview. And she said the House of Windsor was too small for her greatness. The world was crumbling. And yeah. Now, remember, Oprah said, I didn't tell you what questions you're getting, and nothing's off limits, right? And you're not being paid for this, right? That was all wrong. That was absolutely a lie. Oh my God. So they did the Oprah interview. Over the last year, she talked about what her truth was. And she really wanted to shame the royal family. So she knew the sensitive touch points were bullying and racism. So on Tuesday, the 16th of February, 2021, Meghan sat down with Oprah. She rehearsed all of her replies, the appropriate movements of her hand, her head, her eyes, the dramatic whisper. She was innocent when she got engaged. And the most damaging thing she did was throw the blanket of racism over the entire family. We already know about that. Concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born. And they were denying Archie a title and protection because his mother wasn't white. And he was the first member of color in the family not to be titled the same way as the other grandchildren. Of course, we all know about the George V, George VI convention. He did get a title, the Earl of Dumbarton. So Meghan was trying to come off as a martyr, a symbol of the revolution for social justice. Now, Harry was introduced into this interview. It was highly edited. In the last third of the broadcast, he said he felt like he had to appear because he said he faced a choice of life or death when he was abandoned without protection to be destroyed at the mercy of would-be murderers anxious to kill him and his family, and that being silent wasn't working. He said, we were in peril. We had to go. He said that they're planting and leaking stories and, blah, blah, blah. Now, Oprah Winfrey, this says, did not pay for the interview. She didn't pay them directly. Just wait. But right after that, Harry got $500,000 for speaking to JP Morgan bankers in Miami. And with honesty and without thinking about it, Harry contradicted Meghan's description of the family's racism. There was only one conversation about the future child right at the beginning of the relationship before we got married. Meghan wasn't present. There was no talk of titles, no talk of protection. And he goes, at the time, what will the kids look like? At the time, it was awkward. I was a bit shocked. And we found out, right, that the conversation was over tea at Clarence house. It was Charles and Camilla. Catherine wasn't even there. So she maligned Catherine just out of spite. He'd been gushing about finding Meghan, and he described her background, and the three of them laughed about what the child might look like. And of course, when Meghan found out, she weaponized it. Meghan's inaccuracies were not errors. This whole thing was rehearsed. And then, of course, she talked about how she wanted to unalive herself while she was pregnant due to the bullying and abuse online. I just didn't want to be here anymore. I went to the institution. I said I needed to go somewhere to get help. I said, I've never felt this way before and I need to go somewhere. And I was told that I couldn't, that it wouldn't be good for the institution. But she's never said who she went to. Who did she go to? Human Resources. Human Resources. Okay, who in Human Resources? She never would name anybody. And by the way, they went to Human Resources. Nobody had that conversation with her. That was completely untrue. And by the way, Remember, right before the wedding, Harry and William got into a fight, and Buff William knocked Harry down. And what did Harry do? He picked up his phone and he dialed his therapist on tap. But he couldn't do that for Meghan, who wanted to unalive herself. He didn't bother to do anything for her. Now, after the show, Meghan gave a different version, saying that Harry found Meghan crying at Kensington Palace, that Harry found a referral for her to call, and the person she called answered her call while standing at a supermarket checkout. That's not true either. Professionals don't do that. That's not true. And 1 year later, Meghan said, oh, yeah, she was grocery shopping. I could hear the beep, beep, beep. I remember when she said all that. And the woman was like, wait, I'm sorry, who is this? And yeah, never heard another thing about it because it wasn't true. Now, that was the night that they went to the Royal Albert Hall. And supposedly hours earlier, she was contemplating unalive herself. And then later on, she said, I haven't really scraped the surface of my experience. Remember, she said that while she was sitting with the Parents Plus network. Meghan's female advisors in Kensington Palace, the ones that were now in the Sussex Survivor Club, said that she was a narcissistic sociopath. And the proof that they had was that Meghan claimed to Oprah that the marriage service in Windsor was a fraud and that they had been married days earlier in the private ceremony by the Archbishop of Canterbury. And that eyewitnesses had seen them in the garden outside Nottingham Cottage with Meghan and Harry, and dogs were barking near the huddle during what Meghan knew was, at her request, a short blessing, but it was not a marriage ceremony. And don't forget that the Archbishop of Canterbury at the time came out and said that's not true. It would have been illegal if he had done that. He would have gone to prison. So it wasn't true. So 1 week before the Oprah show, the palace found out about it from a trusted source at ITV in London because the station bought the rights from CBS. So the palace decided to retaliate before the show. So 4 days before the broadcast on March 3rd, 2021, Prince William authorized the leaking of the Knopf memorandum about Meghan's bullying of her staff to the Times. The one that had been held back because Harry asked him to. Remember? Harry interfered and said, please, please hold it back. I'll talk to Meghan. Oh my God. None of those involved were identified. All said they operated in a climate of fear. Employees were routinely humiliated by both Meghan and Harry in front of their peers and were given unreasonable demands. So in the furor that followed that revelation, of course, Meghan's supporters said that they shamelessly and obscenely and racist-inspired malice against an innocent woman whose kindness and goodwill runs in her bones. So on the eve of the broadcast, Meghan is supposedly in her bed crying into her pillow, not because she was upset, but because the firm had released the information and had orchestrated a smear campaign. Only William Sr.'s staff would have had that memorandum to pass on to the Times. So later on, a senior Buckingham Palace said that it was a great mistake and a great shame that the complaint was leaked. It caused serious problems, and that Buckingham Palace didn't like what William did. The leak, according to Meghan, vindicated her telling Oprah that the palace could not expect them to be silent if there's an active role that the firm is playing in perpetuating falsehoods about us. And her next soundbite, we've all heard these sound bites. They were willing to lie to protect other members of the family. They weren't willing to tell the truth to protect me and my husband. And then on cue, she brushed aside some of her tears. She'd been so brave. Poor Meghan. And of course, Harry supported her. What she forgot to recall was her own homily. You guys remember Megan's homily? If you live knowing the truth, regardless of what anyone says, you'll be able to go to sleep with a clear conscience. And she said she spoke truth. Oh, actually, Harry said that they spoke truth in the most compassionate way possible and left room for reconciliation and healing. He said that in the Me You Can't See. And the sentiment was grasped by a Buckingham Palace spokesman. And he said that the interview would be a quickly forgotten sideshow lost in the mists of time. What they didn't understand was Harry's terms for reconciliation, which was that everybody share their stories and we want an apology. So that was watched by 49 million people. President Biden, Hillary Clinton, the Obamas, everybody welcomed their courage. Oh my God. Now, one of the really nasty allegations about their dishonesty referred to their original explanation for their leaving from Britain, their demand for privacy. So remember, they wanted privacy. They wanted a private life to bring their children up privately. And after the broadcast, the palace realized that they had worldwide condemnation as racist royals. And that was when the Queen replied, "Recollections may vary." Now, days after that, believe it or not, Charles wrote to Meghan. I'm shocked that he did that because she could take that letter and do whatever with it. I wouldn't have called her, texted her, anything. But he wrote to her telling her that he was very disappointed. And he goes, we're not racist. And so in reply, Meghan decided to identify the person who made the claim. Her text has never been published, but many presume Charles personally of being the culprit. And 2 years later, Meghan's spokesperson suggested that she had referred to unconscious bias, not racism. We all know about that. They went too far and they tried to turn it around, and it wasn't turning around. It wasn't working well. Now, the Sussex spokesperson came out and said, listen, that interview is going to be the last word on what's going on with the royal family. They had their say, and now the matter's closed, and they want to move on. And they made that announcement knowing that the Netflix 6-part series was coming. So, all right, that is the end of number 11. I think we can squeeze 12 in if you want me to do 12, chapter 12. Anybody? Anybody? Or should we stop here? Yeah, I love Recollections May Vary too. If you're talking about Meghan's thing, she lost because they printed too much of the letter. That's why she lost. If they printed like a certain percentage less, she would have lost. All right, number 12. Let's get through this. Number 12, The Me You Can't See is the name of the title. So Liz Garbus, started filming the Netflix series, and they had to sign an NDA. Each member of the 4-man filming crew was ordered never to speak of the Sussexes unless they were directly asked by the couple. They were not to refer to them by their names. They were called H&M. And if they were to talk to them, Meghan was to be called ma'am and Harry sir. Oh my goodness. So Garbus rented that house, and they did the interview over 10 days for 8 hours a day. And camera crews were concealed behind black fabric to create a better atmosphere. But they didn't want the crew to look at Garbus and the way that she was talking with the Sussexes, and no Archewell employees were allowed on the set. By the way, the house that they rented was from a man who had stolen money from wounded veterans. Shocker. Garbus discussed every question that she had for the Sussexes with them before going into the room. They never commented in front of the crew during or after a session about the interviews. And yeah, Archwell at that time had executive producer Ben Browning. And after watching it live on a monitor, he gave his judgment. And he said that when he or the Sussexes decide that a question should be reshot, their decision would not be flagged in front of the crew or any other member of the production team. So they never discussed anything in front of anybody. And Garbus left it to Meghan to be the actress. Now, Harry and Meghan's interview with Oprah in 2021, she was taping. So like the day after, remember? Oh, Beyonce just texted and Harry goes, you guys remember that? And shut up, Meghan said, just checking in, just casual, replies Harry. And Meghan started laughing. I still can't believe she knows who I am. She said she wants me to feel safe and protected. And then she delivered the lines. She admires and respects my bravery and vulnerability and says I was selected to break generational curses that need to be healed. If that exchange, this book says, smelt of reenactment, the call Meghan took from Tyler Perry seemed even less authentic than what followed. Because remember, Meghan was talking to Tyler Perry on the computer. They were Zooming about the Recollections May Vary statement. And Harry's sitting there on his phone. And suddenly he goes, I got a text from William. Yeah, you can see Finn is my screen. I got a text from William. I wish I knew what to do. What do I do? And Meghan goes, I know. And then they embraced and Meghan suggests, let's just take a breather. Let's get some air and then we'll decide. Cut to the end of the scene. So there you go. Now in the middle of all of this, Harry's still dealing with his ghostwriter. There were a number of Random House editors. The draft chapters were a lot about Harry's mental health issues and his recriminations about his family. But some editors spotted that the ghostwriter was unaware of what a hypocrite Harry was because he played the eternal victim. He wants an ordinary life, but he's demanding all the privileges of royalty. Basically, he was angry that he was the spare and he had no purpose in his life. And he's venting his fury that nearly every member of his family failed to appreciate his special needs. And the ghostwriter's draft said that it was basically a one-sided complaint of appalling treatment. So he embellished the story is what he did. He was a Republican, by the way, they said. Harry didn't understand the British Constitution was irrelevant to the ghostwriter. So Harry had said, many of my family aren't able to work and live together because he was voicing that Harry needed a family, not a monarchy. And then Philip died April 9th of 2021. And even though the death was anticipated, that didn't stop Harry from attacking his family. I mean, how bad is that? He arrived at St. George's Chapel on April 17th for the funeral. He said he was afraid to go back because it was going to trigger his trauma, but he couldn't avoid the funeral. And he knew Meghan would be unwelcome, especially after what she said on Oprah. So she wouldn't dare go back. And the Queen apparently, we've heard this before too, the Queen apparently said, thank goodness Meghan's not coming to her aid. Harry had no remorse for everything he had done to the family. Charles and William had totally been thrown under the bus. There was a lot of damage caused by his accusations. And inside the chapel, who could forget that horrible picture of the Queen wearing that black COVID mask, sitting there all by herself, completely isolated. COVID restrictions had limited the number of mourners. And Harry and Prince Andrew, who'd both been stripped of their honor of wearing their service uniforms, they wore mourning suits, as did the other mourners. Charles looked anguished, William was tense, and Harry was just bland. Now, outside afterwards, as he's fanning himself, he knew that the Netflix series was coming. But Catherine, who's always the nicest person, suggested that Harry should walk with William towards the castle. And then she stepped back to give the brothers a chance to talk. And William said to him, "They're filming us," as they marched up the hill. Harry really wants an apology from his family. He should know by now he's just not going to get one. He wants his family to beg him and Meghan to beg for their forgiveness and to come back. Now, I have to be honest, I'm glad they did not apologize. This is me now. I'm glad they didn't apologize, because look what happened when other people give apologies. That guy, what is his name? I know that my moderator is going to pop up with the name, because she always has everything. Anyway, he apologized and Meghan didn't accept the apology. So then he apologized again. She didn't accept that apology either. So now you know there's no point in ever apologizing to Meghan, because she's not gracious enough to ever accept an apology. So anyway, Charles met with Harry and William after the funeral in the gardens. Jeremy Clarkson. Thank you. Yes, Jeremy Clarkson. Harry claimed the meeting was his idea to try to smooth things over. And if you can imagine this, he thought that he saw snipers across the rooftops. God, that guy's paranoid. And the presence of the snipers was because there were threats against him, when the truth is, in reality, they're always there. There were no unusual threats that day. So Harry basically told his father off for behaving badly, for not hugging him and smothering him with love after telling him that Diana had died. He said, "My father was emotionally negligent and he never hugged me." So here we are 24 years later. And he didn't see that his father was suffering loss from the death of his own father, from Charles's father dying. Now, we've all seen the pictures from after the funeral. Everybody stayed away from him. Nobody wanted to talk to him. He was the pariah. And so Charles and William go walking up to him. They're not smiling. And of course, Harry goes, "Well, they've come ready for a fight." And of course, the breakdown of the relationship had nothing to do with Oprah or the things that he and Meghan had said and done and the Netflix series that was coming. He blamed the breakdown of the relations on Charles's request that he stop the legal campaign against the tabloids. So 2 hours after the funeral, Harry is accusing William and Charles of being collaborators with the tabloids against Meghan. And William basically looked at him and said, "You are delusional." And Charles said, "You can't tell the media what to do." Oh my God. Oh, Lord, oh Lord. Now, Harry thought no one showed more vanity towards the media than his father. Remember this, you guys? Quote, "Deprived of love as a boy, bullied by schoolmates, he was dangerously, compulsively drawn to the elixir offered him," meaning the newspapers. So Harry accused the two of them of allowing the tabloids to damage their love and their bond. And yeah, because Harry had no remorse and Harry was so paranoid and he couldn't see out of what was happening, Charles and William decided they couldn't communicate with him anymore. Therapy, he'd been over therapied, in my opinion, had given him a language that William and Charles just totally didn't understand. Every single question that they asked him, Harry took offense or misunderstood. He'd moved into another world and it was just impossible. So that afternoon, neither Charles nor William could understand the deception was acceptable in Harry's world. So he had no sympathy for his family. He gets on the plane. He goes back to Los Angeles. He did not withdraw any of his comments that he made to the ghostwriter. As a matter of fact, he talked about his father to the ghostwriter and called him a, quote, worn out, powerless wreck. He had no compassion for his father, a son burying his father and witnessing his mother sitting there all alone in this chapel. He had no sympathy for them. We do also know that Harry released another private conversation. Charles said to both of the kids, please, boys, don't make my final years a misery. We've heard that before also. So to bring the Windsor Summit to a big thing, the ghostwriter depicted Harry burdened by a death cult generated by his family and the atmosphere in the chapel. Oh my God. The Windsor meeting had not gone well for the three of them, and there would be no reconciliation. Harry was just too fixated by hate. And 1 month later, they had the Apple TV series, The Me You Can't See, about his mental health, again, produced by Oprah. We saw that. It was launched March 21st of 2021, and it was totally focused on his mental torment. All of his family were on the spectrum. The barrier to their relationship was his dysfunctional father and brother's inability to speak the new language. I mean, he even criticized the Queen and Philip as neglectful, unloving parents to Charles. And remember, he said he was going to break the generational pain. The rest of his family were equally to blame for this cycle of suffering and unresolved anger. Oh my God. Now, a writer actually gave him the script to read where he said that his life was a mixture between the Truman Show and being in a zoo. I've seen behind the curtain. I've seen the business model. I know how this operation runs, and I don't want to be a part of that. That was a scripted line given to him by a writer. Now, one of his triggers, he said, was the effort of the firm and the media to smear Meghan, and she was suicidal and she was going to end her life, and it shouldn't have gotten to that. And that was one of the reasons why we had to leave and blah, blah, blah. And Buckingham Palace, they were the villains, and he ramped up, his accusations that he said in the Oprah show. Meghan and he were bullied into silence, and, the palace wouldn't protect them, and it was a betrayal and blah, blah, blah. He claimed that he was persuaded by his therapist that his problems were caused by his family. And he then went on to say that he was using a Class A psychedelic hallucinogen and that had stabilized his mental health. That's scary because he's basically saying you could use these illegal drugs. They were illegal drugs. Now, Harry first publicly revealed his mental health issues in 2017 on a Bryony Gordon Mad World podcast, where he said he was very close to a breakdown on numerous occasions and he was saved by a shrink. And we also know from previous in the book that he went to therapy because William said to him, you need to go talk to somebody. This isn't right. You need to go talk to somebody. And then remember, they started Heads Up. And he said William was a huge, support to me. William was credited with urging him to get the help after his breakdown related to Diana's death and his service in Afghanistan. However, by 2021, it was all Meghan. And William had been completely cut out of the plot. And he also buried his cooperation with them in launching Heads Together campaign. Now, he was liberating himself from being trapped within this uncaring family and the institution. And he said, it was only after I met Meghan in 2016 that I was inspired to pursue therapy. I knew if I didn't fix myself, I was going to lose this woman. And that was the start of the learning journey for me. So, as a matter of fact, it's Meghan's suggestion of therapy is how Harry got brainwashed. So there you go. So I don't think he even realizes that he already credited William and Catherine and blah, blah, blah. And now suddenly he's just cut them out and it's all Meghan. It's just crazy. And the royal family was completely responsible for Meghan wanting to unalive herself. So Meghan was also responsible for some contradictions. She basically disclosed that her search for help while considering unaliving herself was unsuccessful on 2 occasions. Okay, remember, first she went to HR and they spurned her, and she never said she spoke to members of the royal family, and those were some inconsistencies. And then she said she was palmed off after Harry found a referral for her. And in the Apple show, Harry thanked Meghan for telling him to find a therapist, but he had a therapist in 2016. As I said before, when he got in that fight with William, he could have called the same therapist for Meghan in 2019. So this is where Piers Morgan stepped in. He said, I wouldn't believe Meghan Markle if she gave me a weather report. Now, of course, they claim that he had been spurned, and that Meghan's suicidal feelings were a performance to persuade Harry to move to California. Of course, the Apple series got good ratings. Many were impressed by Harry, especially men who hadn't wanted to discuss their mental health issues. Only a few had no sympathy because, let's face it, he's a multimillionaire prince pleading for pity. And, people didn't want to give him sympathy. It was over for him. Now, there was a problem. That's the end of chapter 12. Oh my God. Oh my God. What time is it? Yep. Okay. So we did actually 4 chapters. Come back tomorrow. We'll do at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And we will do 13, 14, 15, and possibly 16. Now, you guys have had a lot of comments. These are interesting. Speaking the new language. The new language is the language of therapy. And yeah, I completely agree with this person. When I have a personal crisis, the first thing I do is go to HR. I think when I read the book, I'm going to have constantly nodding my head and have nerve damage. Carol, you said it right. A revisionist history. Exactly. And also correct. Meghan does not have a title. She has Harry's title. And if Harry loses the title, she loses her title. And he has no self-awareness. The whole thing is just weird. And the guy's obviously got mental health issues. So come back tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. After you watch my video tomorrow, it's going to be another really good one. My God. I mean, it's like a soap opera. It's just crazy what's coming out. I'm just so shocked by everything happening. So watch my video tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss it. It's really, really, really good. They're all really good, but this one's really good. And come back tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and we will start with chapter 13. And the title of that is Security. Ooh, that's going to be a good one. Oh my God. All right. So I'll see you guys tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Everybody have a fabulous night. Talk to you.